Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. President Biden signs a new executive order to dramatically tighten the southern border. But former President Trump says Biden's order will make things worse. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has the details.
Before departing for his trip to France tonight, President Biden announced new executive actions at the White House to tackle illegal immigration, a top issue in voters' mind.
We must face the simple truth. To protect America as a land that welcomes immigrants, we must first secure the border and secure it now.
Biden's new order will allow immigration officials to quickly deport illegal immigrants without processing their asylum claims. That happens once daily crossings hit 2,500.
This ban will remain in place until the number of people trying to enter illegally is reduced to a level that our system can effectively manage.
And Biden also attacked his 2024 rival, former President Trump, for telling Republicans to block a bipartisan border deal in the Senate earlier this year.
He didn't want to fix the issue. He wanted to use it to attack me.
But Trump calls Biden's new order weak, accusing him of doing it just because their debate is coming up in 2 weeks.
But in fact, it's all about show. It will actually make the invasion worse. Millions of people a year will continue to pour across our border and be released into our country.
The U.S. southern border has seen a record 6.4 million illegal crossings under the current administration, but the number has gone down in recent months. Biden's new order uses the same regulation that Trump used as president to stop certain migrants from entering. But Biden, defending his move, which the ACLU is vowing to challenge legally.
I'll never separate children from their families.
And tonight, President Biden will depart for Paris. He will attend a D-Day anniversary ceremony in Normandy, give a speech about freedom and democracy, and pay an official state visit to America's oldest ally, France. Reporting from Paris, Iris Tao, NTD News.
In their opening statements, federal prosecutors accused President Biden's son Hunter of lying about his addiction as the historic gun trial begins. Meanwhile, an FBI special agent confirms the authenticity of Hunter Biden's laptop. Our legal correspondent Arlene Richards has more details.
Just before 10 o'clock Tuesday morning, prosecutors kicked off the historic trial of President Biden's son with a fiery statement. "We're here because of the defendant's lies and choices," prosecutor Derek Hines said. "No one is above the law. It doesn't matter who you are or what your name is." Hunter Biden is accused of illegally purchasing and possessing a gun while abusing or being addicted to drugs, a violation of federal law. He pleaded not guilty to the 3 charges. Prosecutors told the jurors that Biden was still using drugs around the time of the gun purchase and knew that he was an addict. Biden's attorney, Abby Lowell, said Biden didn't know he was an addict when he bought the gun, and that prosecutors had left out the word knowingly during their open. Biden has been open about his struggles with alcohol and crack cocaine addiction, writing about it in a memoir published in 2021. In a 2021 CBS interview, Biden described some of the lowest points of his addiction.
I spent more time on my hands and knees, picking through rugs, smoking anything that even remotely resembled crack cocaine.
The defense says Biden had periods of sobriety, and he didn't consider himself to be addicted at the time of the gun purchase, and suggested Biden didn't have an interest in purchasing a gun when he walked into the store, then blamed the gun salesman for pushing the sale. The prosecution called its first witness FBI Special Agent Erica Jensen. Her testimony corroborated Biden's admissions of drug use in his memoir, and it allowed prosecutors to introduce portions of Biden's book into evidence. Jensen also confirmed the authenticity of the controversial Hunter Biden laptop, which allowed prosecutors to introduce digital evidence, including embarrassing and intensely personal messages and images from the laptop. In earlier proceedings, one juror was dismissed after claiming they were unemployed and lived too far away, and the judge encouraged jurors to take notes, telling them they will not receive copies of written transcripts. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
The House Judiciary Committee grilled Attorney General Merrick Garland today as part of Republicans' investigation into what they call the weaponization of the Justice Department. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has the details.
Attorney General Merrick Garland accused House Republicans of spreading conspiracy theories about the Department of Justice. According to Attorney General Merrick Garland, Congress's request to see the recorded audios of President Biden's interview with Special Counsel Robert Hur as part of the Department of Justice investigation into the president's handling of classified documents is illegitimate.
I will not be intimidated, and the Justice Department will not be intimidated. We will continue to do our jobs free from political influence, and we will not back down from defending democracy.
During a recess, I caught up with Congressman Matt Gaetz, who sits in the House Judiciary Committee, and he accused the Department of Justice and Attorney General Merrick Garland of lack of transparency and of spreading conspiracy theories by not divulging information requested by Congress.
Well, Merrick Garland says it's a conspiracy theory that we've expressed concern about the coordinated lawfare here against President Trump, and all he has to do is release the records. You know, we want to see the calendars, the meetings that occurred between Department of Justice officials and officials for Fani Willis or Alvin Bragg or any other lawfare against Trump.
Speaker of the House Mike Johnson announced this Tuesday a three-pronged plan to attack what House Republicans call the weaponization of the Department of Justice.
These sound like the typical maneuvers they've been engaging in ever since this Congress started, just to attack the rule of law whenever its legitimate operation negatively affects somebody who they want to protect.
Other lawmakers, like Republican Keith Self from Texas, who used to be a county judge, believe that Speaker Johnson's plan is necessary.
I think we have to do it. I'm absolutely committed to that path, because I was in the Trump trial. That was a baked-in verdict. That was blatant election interference.
It remains to be seen if House Republicans will put to a vote in the House floor a resolution to hold Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
Just hours after AG Garland appeared before lawmakers, FBI Director Christopher Wray testified at a hearing on the Bureau's 2025 budget request. He urged Congress to provide the resources needed to combat the top threats to America's national security. NTD's Fiona G. has more.
When I look back over my career in law enforcement, I would be hard-pressed to think of a time when so many different threats to our public safety and national security were so elevated all at the same time. But that is the case as I sit here today.
Speaking before the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee, FBI Director Christopher Wray said the major threats to U.S. national security include both foreign and domestic terrorism, cyber attacks, fentanyl trafficking by the Mexican cartels, as well as anti-Semitism spurred by Hamas's October 7th attacks. Wray also emphasized the threat posed by hostile regimes from Russia, North Korea, and the Chinese Communist Party.
We have seen the Chinese government attempting to target multiple sectors, civilian sectors, to pre-position to potentially cause havoc at a time and place of their choosing. And so that's something that we're really trying to focus on.
Lawmakers also raised questions about possible election interference. Wray said that the issue is of great concern to both himself and the FBI, but did not elaborate. He said the Bureau's highest priority is restoring positions within the agency that had been lost due to budget cuts. According to Wray, the FBI is playing an increasingly major role in local law enforcement through providing training, resources, and information. And in order to continue that work, Wray said it's important for Congress to approve the requested budget. Fiona G., NTD News.
Hezbollah terrorists in Lebanon fired rockets into Israel, causing a large fire to spread in the country. And now the Israeli military says they are close to making a decision on sending troops into Lebanon. NTD's Jason Perry has the latest on the war.
Fires blazed across large parts of northern Israel on Monday night into Tuesday morning. Firefighters tried to put out the flames that were reportedly sparked by a rocket fired from Hezbollah terrorists in Lebanon. The fire burned over 2,000 acres, according to Israel's Nature and Parks Authority, and even reached residential areas in border towns and villages. 16 people, including 7 soldiers who were trying to put out the fire, were taken to a hospital for treatment, according to Ziv Medical Center. An Israeli government spokesperson gave an update on Tuesday.
This is not a sustainable reality. Israel's northern residents, tens of thousands of them, evacuated, will not live under such threat. It is up to Hezbollah to decide if this can be accomplished by diplomatic means or by force.
But Hezbollah is not showing any signs of slowing down. The leader of the Iran-backed terrorist group says they are supporting the Palestinian people and that Hezbollah will continue attacking Israel for as long as Israel continues its war in the Gaza Strip. In the meantime, Israeli forces have been training for a possible ground offensive in Lebanon. And apparently, it's getting very close to decision time on whether to send Israeli troops into Lebanon.
Hezbollah has increased its attacks in recent days, and we are prepared to move to an offensive in the north. Strong defense, readiness for an offensive, we are approaching a decision point.
Meanwhile, in the Gaza Strip, residents gathered here in Khan Yunis to collect water for their families.
I have many dreams which I would like to fulfill. I wanted to do well at school. I want to go abroad and study, but with this war, everything has failed. Our studies have failed. God willing, the war will end, and we will be able to learn and return to what life was like before the war.
A Hamas official on Tuesday responded to the latest ceasefire proposal. He said Israel did not agree to end the war completely, which is something Hamas continues to demand in the ceasefire negotiations. Jason Perry, NTD News.
In San Francisco, pro-Palestinian protesters occupied a building that houses the Israeli consulate. Police began making arrests after protesters ignored warnings to leave.
San Francisco police arrested 70 pro-Palestinian demonstrators on Monday for occupying the lobby of a San Francisco building that houses the Israeli consulate and refused to leave. The protesters posted signs on the front doors of the building calling for an end to the Israel-Hamas war.
So today at 9 a.m. we occupied the building that houses the Israeli consulate. In a sense, we're occupying the occupier's space. And we're doing that because we are part of the growing masses of people who are demanding an end to the genocide and who are in solidarity with Palestine and very concerned about the complicity of particularly the United States government with the genocide that's happening.
Protesters had said they plan to stay until forcibly removed. Police officers made multiple warnings, ordering the demonstrators to leave before they moved in and started detaining people. No injuries were reported. According to a Reuters witness, police led protesters out of the building one by one and loaded them into police vehicles, their hands bound by zip ties. A group called the International Jewish Anti-Zionist Network said on Instagram that over 100 people had participated in the protest. The Israeli consulate said it was, quote, appalled but not surprised by the protesters who entered the lobby of the building where the consulate is located. The consulate added that the police responded rapidly.
Today in India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his party claimed victory in the general election. Modi told a crowd of supporters today's victory is the victory of the world's largest democracy. This is his third term. He promised to continue to work to grow and expand India's economy by increasing defense production and raising exports. However, his alliance failed to secure the majority in parliament for the first time since Modi was elected in 2014. His party will need the support of other alliances to get the majority of votes required to pass laws. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Earlier, we spoke with Andrew Arthur, fellow in law and policy at the Center for Immigration Studies, about President Biden's executive order on the border crisis. Will the new rule be effective, and what is significant about its timing? Andrew Arthur, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Now, President Biden is enacting a new executive order to combat the immigration crisis. To begin, what is your reaction to this order and how effective it'll be?
So it's very interesting because, the president has had this authority ever since day one to, take actions like this. And yet, for some reason, he's waited until June of 2024, 5 months before the election, to actually use it. And that's after we've already had, about 5 to 6 million aliens apprehended and released into the United States, and after about 2 million others have evaded apprehension and entered the country illegally. So any action that the president can take that will secure the border, and this will make it slightly more easy for CBP to Customs and Border Protection to secure the border, is a good idea. But the timing is questionable. The likelihood that this is actually going to survive court challenges is questionable. And the fact that it doesn't actually do anything about the millions of migrants who have already been released into the United States is problematic. So, each of those things is going to adversely affect the success of this proposal.
I want to get to the gotaways part, but first, to your point, former President Trump has railed on this, saying that, as you said, Biden has had this power since day one, and saying that he had done this in the past to help the border. Now, how is this different from what Trump did, or is this the same?
So President Trump, back in November 2018, issued a presidential proclamation that barred the entry of anybody coming to the United States illegally. At the same time that he did that, DHS issued a rule in conjunction with DOJ that barred aliens who entered the United States in violation of that order from applying for asylum. So to a certain degree, this is sort of a light version of what President Trump did back in November 2018. Again, the one thing that President Biden could have done that would have been effective would to have been to have re-implemented Remain in Mexico, the migrant protection protocols, which actually did have a significant impact on the number of people coming illegally. President Biden didn't do that. By the way, that November 2018 action that President Trump took was enjoined by the Ninth Circuit. So, it's sort of odd that President Biden would pick a tool that's similar to one that Trump used, that courts have already, blocked, instead of using Remain in Mexico, which courts were largely fine with.
And Andrew, as a former immigration judge, how can Biden's new executive order be enforced, practically speaking?
So it's going to be incumbent upon Customs and Border Protection to actually turn around those folks who come illegally after the order goes into effect. And I understand it's going to take effect right away. So that's going to rely upon the Mexican government to take those folks back. The Biden administration has indicated that the Mexican government is willing to take back not only its own nationals, but also nationals from Central American countries, from Venezuela and from Cuba and Haiti as well, in Venezuela. So, the direct implementation of this should be rather simple. Folks show up after the limit is set, and they're turned around. But there is a massive exception in this rule for people who claim asylum. Right now, smugglers are telling everybody to claim asylum. And so that's probably just going to bog down the effectiveness of this rule. So, as a practical matter, implementing this rule is going to be exceptionally difficult unless massive amounts of resources are surged to the southwest border, and I haven't seen that that's going to happen.
Now, to one of your earlier points, how does this executive order impact the gotaways? Rough estimates say there's over 2 million gotaways in the country. We don't know who they are or where they are. Does this executive order deal with that? How would that work?
Yeah, no, it doesn't deal at all with anybody who's legally present in the United States today. It doesn't bar those people retroactively from applying for asylum. And it doesn't include any new enforcement measures that would allow Immigration and Customs Enforcement to go out and pick those people up. In fact, they're still laboring under rather tight restrictions that DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas imposed back in September 2021. So, this is really a very, forward-looking thing. Anybody that shows up is going to be impacted by this, subject to the exceptions and loopholes that the Biden administration has built into it. But, yeah, with respect to the gotaways, it's now going to give migrants entering the United States more incentives to evade Border Patrol, which is going to make Border Patrol's job all the harder.
Now, according to polls, immigration has surged into one of the main issues, many pointing it's due to bad policies. Why do you think something wasn't implemented sooner?
So I think that the president is attempting to deal with his own base, progressive Democrats who don't really believe in any restrictions on the number of foreign nationals who are allowed to come into the United States. In fact, in at least one Biden administration policy statement, they equate the immigration laws with the discriminatory laws of the United States past. But the other constituency he's dealing with is, those large number of independents that President Biden's going to rely upon if he's going to be reelected. And, you talked about the polling. It's interesting because back in August of 2022, in one poll, just 44% of registered voters considered illegal immigration to be a serious problem. That was 2 years ago, almost. In March, Harvard-Harris did a poll in which individuals who were polled said that illegal immigration and the border are the most serious issue facing the United States. So I think that the American people have finally, figured out what's going on at the border, and that's why the president had to take the action now. But I agree with Speaker Mike Johnson, who said it's too little, too late.
Andrew Arthur, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
And how is the influx of illegal immigrants affecting the American school system? House lawmakers asking that question today at a hearing on Capitol Hill. NTD's Arian Pastar brings us the highlights.
The president's current policies for open borders are hurting America top to bottom.
The House Education and Workforce Committee held a hearing on Tuesday, probing how illegal immigration affects the school system. Lawmakers laid out that the influx of people is putting a heavy financial burden on school districts. And the fact that many of the kids who come don't speak any English also creates problems.
They're considerably behind our own students, and it does drag down the entire classroom and takes resources from the whole class.
The Democrat ranking member said she's concerned that the rhetoric being used by Republicans might be dangerous for immigrant kids.
When research shows that migrant students often face disproportionate risk of bullying and harassment, there's no question that we have challenges at our U.S. border. We all acknowledge that. But we're talking about children here.
One of the witnesses said often it's the immigrants themselves who suffer most from making the journey to the U.S.
And then when I asked them, would you do it again? Every single time, resoundingly, absolutely not. Tell them not to come. Because they had an idea that it was going to be dangerous, but they didn't know like this. And at what cost? To then be released into our communities? And what does their future look like when we can't even speak their own language?
Once in the U.S., many immigrants don't have any documentation when they arrive. They're still being taken into the school system, however, based on self-provided information, which can't be verified.
But yet, as an American, even when I enrolled my children and even switching school districts, we had to jump through hoops to provide documentation of vaccination status.
In some cases, the information illegal immigrants without documents provide seems to be obviously incorrect.
There was talk of a student who claimed to be 18 but looked 26 or 27. Does that happen a lot?
Well, and that's the thing, is that we really don't know until something happens.
Since President Biden took office, immigration authorities have encountered almost 500,000 unaccompanied children. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Voters in 3 states are heading to the polls today for primary elections. New Jersey, Iowa, and Montana have a handful of important Senate and House races to watch. In New Jersey, Democrats are expected to nominate Congressman Andy Kim to run for the seat currently held by Senator Bob Menendez. Menendez is on trial for corruption charges. He said yesterday that he would file to run as an independent. Given Menendez's presence in the race, Republicans have a better than usual opportunity to flip the seat. In Montana, Democratic Senator Jon Tester will try to secure his 4th term in office. This will be one of the toughest races for Democrats this year in their campaign to retain control of the Senate. And in Iowa, there are 2 competitive congressional races that could impact control of the House. Both of them are currently held by Republicans. Today marks the 35th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre in Beijing. On June 4th, 1989, the Chinese regime deployed the military to quell a pro-democracy protest, killing what's estimated to be thousands of people, many of them students. Today, in a rare moment of bipartisanship on Capitol Hill, lawmakers gather to commemorate this infamous day in history. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has more from Capitol Hill.
On the 35th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre, the House Select Committee was speaking out against the atrocities that were happening in China back in 1989 and that are still occurring today.
Human rights have eroded in China when you consider Hong Kong was promised to be two systems, one country. That has not occurred.
We need to remember, but we need to act. And acting means, for instance, bringing it up in every conversation and dialogue that we have with the CCP.
They surveil their citizens like no other nation. Their citizens are petrified to speak their mind because they can be whisked away at any time.
They're afraid of basic human rights, the aspirations that all humans share, that Americans share, but the Chinese people do too. And I think someday the Chinese Communist Party is going to have a serious reckoning with the Chinese people.
The Tiananmen Square massacre was when over 1 million people, many of them students, protested in Beijing in 1989. They were speaking out against the CCP's corruption, economic mismanagement, nepotism, and poor career prospects for students. After weeks of protests, the Chinese regime dispatched soldiers and tanks to crush the demonstrations. The footage of Tank Man, a lone protester standing in front of a line of tanks, has become one of the most iconic symbols of the 20th century. The regime's human rights abuses continue to this day, with the persecution of Falun Gong, the Uyghurs, and the Tibetans. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said in a statement on Tuesday, quote, "We remember the tens of thousands of peaceful Chinese pro-democracy protesters who were brutally assaulted for standing up for freedom, human rights, and an end to corruption. We also honor the many voices now silenced throughout the country, including in Xinjiang, Tibet, and Hong Kong." Congressman Andy Barr just visited Taiwan last week with several lawmakers to congratulate Taiwan's new president and reaffirm U.S. support.
This harassment of a free and democratic island is more evidence that what happened in 1989 is even worse today.
Human rights groups and witnesses estimate the death toll of the Tiananmen Square massacre to be up to several thousand, and it's one of the most censored topics in China to this day. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jack Bradley, NTD News.
And joining me now to reflect on the Tiananmen Square massacre is Van Fleet, survivor of Mao's Cultural Revolution and author of Mao's America, A Survivor's Warning. Van Fleet, thank you so much for joining us. Great to see you again. Now, to begin, this year marks the 35th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. Why is it important for people in the West to remember what happened that day in China?
It is very, very important that we remember it, because in China, the memory has been erased. Ask young people in China today what happened in Tiananmen Square today, 30 years ago. They will give you a blank look. They don't know because they were never taught, and it's been erased. And even today in the West, the big techs are helping the CCP to erase the history. In Google, you cannot find any of the bloody photos, and in YouTube today or in the past week has busy taking down videos on this topic. So we have the duty to remember and also to remind Americans, this is what happened to citizens who are disarmed under a totalitarian dictatorship.
I want to expand on what you said when it comes to those inside China. You mentioned in a post on X, actually, that, quote, ask young people in China today about June 4th. You will most likely get a blank look. The CCP has successfully kept this inconvenient historic event from the younger generations. Now, what is the impact on the younger generation of China? What does that mean for when they go abroad?
Yeah, well, a lot of them got shocked when they learned the fact here. But this is not just happening in China, it happened here. The history has been rewritten, the inconvenient facts have taken out. Why? Indoctrinate the younger generation. So this will be a very good day for to us to be reminded that we have to keep the history alive, and we cannot erase it, and so that the younger generation don't understand what happened in the past. When they don't understand what happened in the past, they don't understand what's going on today.
Now, in your post, you also say, quote, "Today should be a sober reminder to all of us that a totalitarian regime would do anything in order to hold on to power, including killing defenseless civilians." Now, when it comes to how the CCP deals with censorship within its border, what does that mean for us here in America?
And I think it's just a good reminder that it has been happening in China, and it's happening in the West. And a lot of the things that were not told to the public and not taught to the children. And that's why what's going on in China and what's going on in America today is a history repeating, but many people have no idea.
Stephen Fleet, survivor of Mao's Cultural Revolution, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Social Security benefits may be cut drastically within the decade. Lawmakers declare they should act so retirees can receive full benefits. Here are the details.
They're going to see a 21% cut in their Social Security.
In less than a decade, retirees could have their Social Security benefits cut in a system that's constantly at risk of collapse. The House Social Security Subcommittee tackled the issue Tuesday.
For many, it's the only source of retirement income that they depend on.
Representative Dan Kildee said it's important for Congress to keep the Social Security payments going.
These folks that I represent, and that we all represent, have contributed to Social Security with every paycheck, and rightfully expect that it will be waiting for them when it's time for them to retire. That's sort of the deal.
Currently, all proposed solutions kick the can down the road.
If we increase the taxable share back to 90%, it's around 82.5 now, so made 90% taxable, that would delay exhaustion by 4 years.
Philip Swaggle, director of the Congressional Budget Office, said proposed solutions would make a difference. Solutions such as more taxes, lower payments to retirees, increasing the retirement age, and increasing immigration. But they would only delay the collapse.
If we subjected all earnings in the U.S. to the Social Security payroll tax, we'd still have about a $10 trillion shortfall over the next 75 years.
Representative Drew Ferguson said the solutions could also add to the national debt, which is nearing $35 trillion.
Teenagers are spending hours scrolling their phones and consuming potentially harmful content. New York State could soon pass a new bill targeting this problem and protecting minors from the addictiveness of social media. NTD's Fiona G has more.
The Safe for Kids Act would require social media companies to organize content by chronological order for minors, instead of curating personalized feeds with algorithms. It would also restrict social media notifications and alerts from being sent to minors between 12 and 6 a.m. Websites would not be allowed to collect or use personal data from any child under 18 years old. Parents would have to explicitly give permission to remove these restrictions. Some of the biggest critics of the law are large social media companies. They claim the law violates free speech rights and that algorithms ensure minors see age-appropriate content. Both New York Governor Kathy Hochul and Attorney General Letitia James support the bill. It is still being finalized, but state lawmakers could vote on it as soon as this week. If passed, the law would be the first of its kind in America. Fiona G., NTD News.
And now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin over at the Sports Hub. Dave, a lot going on today, especially at the French Open, so let's start there. Novak Djokovic withdrew today due to a knee injury. Now, he's yet to win a title this year, which is unusual for him. What will this do to his ranking?
Yeah, he's no longer going to be the #1 ranked player in the game. The only way he would have kept his #1 ranking is had he won the French Open. Now, he did have an important win yesterday, breaking a tie between him and Roger Federer for most Grand Slam matches won all time with now 370. And like almost every other major men's tennis record, there's a familiar three at the top. you've got Djokovic, Federer, and Rafael Nadal, usually known as the Big Three of men's tennis. Now let's take a look at the leaderboard here of most Grand Slam matches won all time. Here's the top 7. You can see Pete Sampras in 7th with 203. You've got Ivan Lendl, Andre Agassi, Jimmy Connors here with 233. That used to be the mark, but look at the separation here. That's a big gap just between him and Nadal, let alone Djokovic and Federer. Here's a big 3 right here. Now, Federer retired a couple years ago due to injuries. Nadal looks like he's soon going to be on his way out. It looks like Djokovic is going to be the last man standing of these 3, and I think he's going to have all the records.
Over on the women's side of the French Open, two-time reigning champion Iga Swiatek rolled into the semifinals with a dominant win today. Up next, she'll have to face reigning U.S. Open champion Coco Gauff in the semifinals. What are Gauff's chances here?
You know, historically, not great. I say that because these two have played 10 times, and Swiatek has won 9 of them, including wins at each of the last 2 French Opens where she's won the title. Now, Swiatek, ever since she dropped a set in the second round to Naomi Osaka, has been especially lights out. Her last 2 matches especially, she's won 24 of the 26 games. I mean, that's almost unheard of at this level. But Gauff is playing well too. She's dropped just 1 set in her 5 matches here. Plus, you've got to figure she's got to be motivated to beat Swiatek after all these losses. Now, this is going to be a matchup of 2 of the top 3 women's ranked women's players in the world, so it should be very entertaining.
Moving to Major League Baseball news, a surprising development as the league has permanently banned a player for gambling on baseball games. Were these illegal bets that were placed?
These are actually legal bets as far as the federal law is concerned. Now, we're talking about former Padres and Pirates player Tucupita Marcano. Now, the reason baseball comes down so hard on this is for integrity purposes. I mean, if players are able to gamble on their own games, well, fans think they're fixed. That becomes the issue. Now, according to their investigation, Marcano placed a total of 387 bets, totaling more than $150,000 over the past 2 years. Now, 25 of those bets were actually on Pirates games while he was a member of the team, but he was on the injured list. Now, his punishment was part of a bit larger investigation. There were also 3 minor league players that got 1-year bans from Major League Baseball for gambling on Major League Baseball.
Keeping with that theme, the interpreter for Shohei Ohtani pleaded guilty this morning to bank and tax fraud after stealing nearly $17 million from the Dodgers star. Is there any question regarding Ohtani's involvement in this?
No, really from the get-go, it seems like Mitsuhara has been the one who acted alone in this, and Ohtani has been the unfortunate victim. Now, Mitsuhara has admitted that he stole from Ohtani to pay off his debts. According to federal prosecutors, Ohtani, who doesn't speak English, needed Mitsuhara's help to open a bank account. This is back in 2018. A few years later, when Mitsuhara was unable to pay off his gambling debts, he signed into the account online, changed the email and phone number that was registered to the account. And then on multiple occasions from 2021 to 2024, he wired out a total of more than $16 million. Now, in any case, the sentencing for this case is going to be in October. The combined charges for these two carry a maximum of 33 years in jail, and Mitsuhara is going to have to pay Ohtani back the $16 million he owes him.
Dave, as always, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Tiff.
World War II Army veteran Jake Larson is 101 years old and a survivor of D-Day, history's largest water invasion on June 6, 1944. He's heading to France for the 80th anniversary to honor his brothers in arms who did not make it home.
World War II U.S. Army veteran Jake Larson is getting set to head to France to mark the 80th anniversary of D-Day.
That's the outfit I joined when I was 15. It says, "To the last man." I am the last man.
Larson wants to be in Europe on June 6th to honor his fallen brothers in arms.
I'm 101 years old. I don't have an ache or a pain in my body. Spent 3 years over in Europe. I'm a survivor of the battle of D-Day, through the Battle of the Bulge. It's crazy. Every person I was with is gone. I came through 6 battles without a scratch.
Larsen was among the 150,000 Allied soldiers that stormed France in 1944 to drive out Nazi German forces, the largest amphibious invasion in history. He remembers landing on Normandy's Omaha beach with over 70 pounds of gear on his back. There were Germans firing from the dunes.
I'm here to tell you, I'm not a hero.
Larsen made the commemorative journey back to France last year, too.
I got carried out of hospital in 47. I was 3 years in the hospital.
What a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah.
He says he survived only because of the sacrifice of others who did not.
Those guys there's the ones that deserve recognition. And I'm here to make sure that happens. I honor those guys. Those guys laid down their life for me.
And that's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.